Hi, my name is Mavashev. I'm a Chief Technology Officer at Nastel Technologies. And today, I want to explore the topic tracking transactions and applying complex event processing to determine normal versus abnormal. Well, let's look at as an example of a typical application. And a typical enterprise application usually involves multiple tiers, and we can take an example of a payment application. So let's take a payment app. An application like this usually would involve multiple tiers. Could have a web, a J2E tier, connected over a middleware, and also have a back office environment. That could be usually, in this case, let's assume this is a mainframe as the system. So a typical user would, let's draw this little guy here, would enter an order or submit a payment. That payment will go through a variety of different internally, potentially multiple queues, and then essentially end up on the mainframe and the database somewhere. Let's assume this is DB2. A typical problem that customers experience, especially folks that actually support this environment, is the fact that what happens if a payment actually doesn't arrive on time or fails somewhere in between, and what kind of monitoring they can put in place in order to actually get a timely response and reduce mean time to problem resolution. Nastel provides a technology, AutoPilot M6, that allows people who support these applications to monitor transactions in real time. Let's draw AutoPilot M6 here. And what this technology allows you to do is observe transaction flow as the messages flow from point to point, and be able to actually stitch the transactions together and tell you how does the original request for payment relate to all of the activities, let's call it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, downstream across multiple tiers.
So I have a question for you, Albert. So if I was a customer and I was calling into the support desk and I'm wondering, did my payment get processed? Where's my payment? Would this type of solution help me with that?
Absolutely. So this is actually one of the typical use cases. An application support group gets a call and says, hey, my payment didn't process. And in fact, they will usually give you not something technical, but they'll give you usually a payment ID. Now that is in fact would need to be translated as to the underlying infrastructure and underlying interactions 1, 2, 3, and 4 that might potentially happen, or steps that happen as a result of fulfilling that payment ID. So one of the challenges there is obviously relating how do I translate that payment ID to the actual executions in the infrastructure. So the user that actually calls in and says, hey, my payment ID is 1005. Can you tell me what happened to it? We can almost instantaneously tell you, did it complete? Yes or no? If not, what happened to it? Did it stuck at step number 2? Is it stuck at step number 3, 4, or 5? And if so, why? So we can actually answer the question as to why. Is it because it was sitting on a database? Is it because a database call was slow? Or is it because it's sitting somewhere in the queue? So we can actually relate the business, how the business understands the business transaction, to how the actual IT sees it in the underlying environment. So that's one use case of following the transaction flow through the environment and relating that transaction to the actual business concept or business transaction.